Morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. My name's Adam, not Kerry, as it says in the description. We've had a quick little last-minute change here. Before I bring my guest on, Andrea is obviously my co-host, isn't going to be with us tonight. Obviously, she's got a family emergency coming up. Come up, so I have to deal with that. And basically it's just as it is, and changes can happen at any time, any place, and that's how it is. So please remember, we're going to be on Spotify, Amazon Music, you name it. The link tree description is in the description, and please go and subscribe. But today we're going to be talking about bipolar, and we have got a new bit here on the Warriors. Kitt O'Malley, I probably said that absolutely wrong, as I normally do, and she's laughing in the green room, so that's clearly accurate. So let's bring her on. I will see you in about 60 seconds. Hello.
Hey. O'Malley has said, I say it in an American accent, so however the Irish say it would be. And I know there's a lot of accents in Ireland, so I don't know what the proper way of saying it is.
Kitt O'Malley,
who knows? It depends. And actually, it used to be in Irish a different name. Right, so it's a derivation of the Irish name.
Oh, interesting. Right. Well, welcome to the Warriors. I know you was pumped up for this, so let's throw some quick fire questions at you, and then we'll just dive into it. LOL, that's going to be tuning in. If you're on the replay, we still love you. Please, all that. Kitt looks like she's absolutely. Are you okay?
I am so sorry. Let me just get some water.
Yeah, you get some water. My guest is.
Oh, okay. I've been struggling because our mountains are on fire.
Okay.
I live in the Pacific Coast in Oregon, and we've had this 100,000 acre forest fire. And I'm an asthmatic, so I took cough syrup, but it's not working.
Will the diffuser work with essential oils?
Oh, maybe. But anyway, I might have a reaction to that.
Possibly. As long as you're okay.
I'm going to put it on mute while you're asking the question.
Okay, no problem. Yeah. See, anything can happen here in the Warriors. Anything. So, I think I'm just going to have Kitt in stitches tonight. Which I'm clearly good at putting people in stitches. Anyhow. So
sorry about that. It's terrible. I had to.
Don't apologize.
Reschedule another podcast because of this too. I keep on it's been months because the fire's been going on since August.
Yeah, don't apologize. We always say never apologize. Never.
Right.
Yeah.
But you don't want to be coughing into a microphone.
No, it's okay. We've had people apologizing when they swear and everything like that, but it's like don't apologize because that's expressing how you feel.
Yeah, it's something I can't control, unfortunately.
Exactly. I'm the same. I just come across it as it is. Anyhow, So quick fire question. So I'll make it short and sweet, and then we'll just dive into your story. So I'm gonna say, are you a night owl or an early bird?
Night owl.
No. Yeah. Okay. And if anyone's got any questions as well, put them in the comments, and I'll give them to Kitt. And I'll make this last one, then we'll just dive into it. Does pepperoni belong on pizzas?
Pepperoni?
No, pineapple. Sorry,
Pineapple. No. And my husband and I have a civil war going on about this. His favorite pizza is Hawaiian. No. Pineapple does not belong on a pizza.
Me and Kerry is the same. She absolutely adores and loves pineapple. I cannot. I'll only have pineapple if I'm blending it into a smoothie or a juice. Yes. So let's dive into your story. So obviously I'm going to say, who is Kitt? Like, where's she originally? Get your words out, Adam. Come on. Okay. Where you originated from? Okay. What's your upbringing? And
okay. Yeah.
Totally. So I'll give you the spotlight, and we'll go from there.
So I actually have a very I moved a lot as a kid. I was born in San Francisco, and then at 2 years old we moved to Saudi Arabia. Lived there for 5 years, and after that moved to Massachusetts, which is the east coast of the United States, then to Los Angeles, then to Pennsylvania, and then back to Los Angeles. And I've lived as an adult in Los Angeles, greater Los Angeles, and in the San Francisco Bay Area, and in Oregon. And I'm currently living in the Cascade Mountains in Oregon, where, as you can tell by my asthma, we have 100,000 acres of forest on fire, which is not good for asthma. Okay, I don't know what else to say. So what I will say.
Yeah, so obviously we'll get into the fire if you want, which I'm hoping everyone is okay in your area. I really do. So it's a tough life. It's a tough time to be living in, whether it's Canada, America, whatsoever. Because obviously with the floods that have happened recently, and then obviously the mountain fires. So it is a hard time. So obviously I don't just give a shout out to Andrea, who I hope who will be back next week, but I give a shout out to every single American and Canadian out there, especially after Thanksgiving as well. Which I would pop a joke with that one, but I don't think that's the time, so I'm not going to. But anyway, so it is. So let's talk about like bipolar. Like, obviously you've got your experience living with bipolar, so just give a little bit of a heads up to the viewers about what bipolar is and how it can actually impact an individual.
Okay, so bipolar disorder is it's on a spectrum. Okay, I'm trying to look at myself while I'm doing this. So there's mild to severe. So bipolar type 1, which is the most severe type, has full-blown mania and deeper depression. So it's what full-blown mania can look like is anywhere from euphoric, elated feelings, rapid thoughts going through the head, rapid speech. For me, I had an episode of manic psychosis where I was thinking in streams of thought, speeding streams of thought about binary code, like in zeros and ones, about the saints, Christian mystic saints, those good old Catholic saints, and about chaos theory. So, and it was just streaming through my head, and I was able to observe it. And luckily, I wasn't doing things that were real harmful. I was just had thought psychosis. And so that's what it can look like. It can look like overspending, like a lot, going bankrupt, doing very destructive things like that. It can so that those are examples of what mania can look like. The milder version of mania would be hypomania, and I have experienced that too, where I just felt euphoria, and felt like God was calling me to do one thing or another thing, but it was mostly the euphoria. And my hypomania tends to be speeding thoughts, but not of that level of, psychotic content, just my regular thoughts speeding through my head. Being overproductive, like way productive, being maybe irritable and testy. So it can look different ways for different people. And then depression, most people are familiar with depression. Depression is not just sadness, it's a period of low that's longer than 2 weeks, and that can that interferes with your life. And it can be, for me, it involved suicidal thoughts. When I was young, as I've gotten older, my therapy and medication have helped me with that, and I don't have those thoughts anymore. But when I was 18, that's the first time I had any kind of mental health issues, was when I was 18 and I was suicidal.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know what manic depression is. It's obviously when you're constantly having the same feelings for up to, I think it's like 3 months or something like that. So what's the difference between manic depression and does bipolar actually, could it play a major factor into that?
It's the same thing. It's just a different, they named it.
Ooh.
In the United States. I don't know what they do. I haven't looked at the ISO. Is that what it's called? The diagnostic thing that's used. Anyway, in the United States, they use what's called the
statistics.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
So here they use the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. And basically the DSM just describes symptoms and then puts a label on it. We're not yet at that point where we have like, oh, here's a blood test or a brain scan or something that can accurately diagnose something. And actually in medicine, a lot of things are that way too, where the diagnoses are basically just labeling symptoms. So bipolar, what is now called bipolar, used to be called manic depression. And I think manic depression gives a better description of the disorder. Bipolar disorder is kind of, but people have their own opinions about language. Bipolar disorder is sort of, it just doesn't really, it's not descriptive to me. But the idea is that you have these two poles that you swing between, but it's not even accurate that way, because you can experience what's called mixed symptoms or mixed episodes, where you have both symptoms of mania and symptoms of depression simultaneously. And that's what I had when I was hospitalized, voluntarily hospitalized. And that's actually a very dangerous combination, because when you're really depressed, really depressed, deeply depressed, you can be so depressed you don't act on it. But when you have mixed symptoms, you have the energy from the high part to act on the low part. And so it could be very, very dangerous and life-threatening. There's also something called rapid cycling, whereas usually a manic episode would last, at least a week. I'm not a psychiatrist, so I'm just kind of
Absolutely.
And then the depression would last at least 2 or more weeks. And you wouldn't necessarily go back and forth, right? Like you might have one manic episode and then you know, you might have one and then never again, or one, you know what I mean? You don't necessarily have them periodically. But in rapid cycling, you'd be going back and forth quickly.
Absolutely.
And I've experienced that too.
Yeah, well, it says here via cymix.com, as of 30th of March 2021, research from Bipolar UK shows that it takes an average of 9 years for someone with bipolar to be correctly diagnosed. Some studies have put that figure as high as 14 years, during which time they will be misdiagnosed an average of 3.5 times.
Yeah. I was diagnosed with depression at 18 years old, and I was treated with psychotherapy for depression, and it helped me cope, but I still had this tendency to overwork and crash. And so I was like a workaholic, and I would continually overwork and crash. And so like my jobs would be, either I'd have to switch, I'd end up switching jobs when I crashed. Not that I was fired, but I would just need to take a break because I wouldn't be able to sustain that high level. And then when I was 30, and then so I just did psychotherapy for that throughout my 20s. And I even became a psychotherapist. I was a master's level, got a master's in psychology, and was a psychotherapist of severely emotionally disturbed adolescents in residential and day treatment. So I actually have some background as a clinician back in the 90s. So the early 90s, late 80s. And then I, at 30, became so depressed. I had a client, I had triggers that kind of triggered depression. My grandmother died, a friend from high school died of AIDS, and it was that time when people were dying of AIDS, and I had a lot of friends who had HIV, and it was tragic. And I had a client in day treatment, a 6-foot-year-old adolescent boy, 16 years old, and he attempted to rape me. And I went to go get the phone. He disconnected the phone. Luckily I was able to go like back and forth and get past him and get out the room. And after that, I just wasn't even able to get out of bed. I became just severely depressed. And I was depressed before that because of the deaths and stuff, but that was just the worst. And I called my parents up and I said, I can't even get out of bed. I can't do this anymore. And they said, go to your doctor, look into medication for the depression. And so I went, and that's sort of what triggered my mania. I was put on antidepressant medications, a rapid change of medications because I got a second opinion from a psychiatrist. So I was like 3 different antidepressants within a few months. And that's what led to the mania, the full-blown mania with that psychotic thought process I was talking about. Now, at that time, bipolar 2, now that's a full-blown manic episode. So you would think, oh, that's bipolar. But because I had been taking the medications, they thought, and a rapid change of medications, they thought that it was triggered by the medications. Nowadays, they look at that and they think, okay, that is a predictor that this person actually does have bipolar disorder because they became manic from the medications. But back then they thought, okay, that's just what we call iatrogenic, which is caused by the treatment. Let's see if we can get her on a real low dose, slowly, titrate her up on a low dose of medication, antidepressant. And I was what they would call stable in that I didn't have full-blown mania after that until I was 39. So we're talking 18 to 39. So that's a couple of decades. And when I was 39, I started feeling hypomania, where I was feeling euphoric. And I was feeling that God was calling me to one church for spiritual direction and to another church for a Bible study. And whereas that behavior was fine, going to church is fine, the euphoria I felt, and that it was God calling me, whether or not, and I actually believe that it's possible for God to call you in the midst of a
Yeah.
mental crisis, but I recognize that feeling as being symptomatic of hypomania. And so I called the advice nurse for my insurance policy, and I asked my husband to get on the phone so he'd know how serious this was. And the advice nurse said, go to the emergency room or see a psychiatrist today. So I ended up being diagnosed bipolar 2, which is the more mild version, until later when I had those rapid cycling and mixed episodes. I ended up, I guess, 4 years later. Was it 4 years later? No, just a couple of years after that, actually. I ended up having myself voluntarily hospitalized for a couple of weeks. And then I was in what they call partial hospitalization for months, which is when you kind of, your job is to go to the hospital as an outpatient and to take group classes all day, so it's like group therapy, art therapy, that kind of stuff all day with other people who are in the same thing until you're stable enough to not need that structure, because I needed that structure.
Absolutely. I've always wanted to know this, so I'm going to ask it. Do you think being hospitalized can actually do worse to your mental health than being out in the community?
Well, I luckily called my psychologist, because when I had that incident where I was diagnosed, I was actually breastfeeding my son and had to go away to wean him abruptly. So I went to my parents' house and my husband stayed with our son. And then when I found that I still wasn't able to cope with the symptoms that I was having, I called my psychologist, and she said, come back because the best hospital for you to go to is near your home. So I chose the hospital I went to, and I went to an excellent hospital that had an excellent program. So it was in Laguna Beach. I had a view of the ocean. I mean, it was a hospital, but it wasn't, there's a huge disparity in quality of care at hospitals. And I went to a hospital that had an excellent program that was very much recovery oriented. So if you're doing with other people group therapy, where you're doing, occupational therapy, and then you're doing, art therapy, and then you're doing yoga, and then you're going for a walk, and you know what I mean? I mean, that's excellent care, right? So I think that if you're getting excellent care, especially if you're like me, I had insight into what was going on. So I voluntarily chose to go, and I went to the hospital I wanted to go to. So if I had been, taken by the police against my will and put into a very poor quality hospital, that could have been very traumatic. And for many people, they have very traumatic experiences being hospitalized because their quality of care isn't there and because there was no buy-in.
Yeah, absolutely. I need to connect you with my colleague Dale Walsh, because he's been hospitalized a number of times. So yes, he lives with schizophrenia. So yes, so yeah, I need to connect you with him. So what would you say is the best treatment if for example someone was against medication? What would be the best treatment for bipolar?
Honestly, I can't answer that question. I think that the answer is always unique to the individual. So what works for me might not work for somebody else. Now, and it's very hard there are lots of people who are family members, loved ones of somebody with serious mental illness, like my bipolar disorder, and whose loved ones are so symptomatic, and they refuse, I'm not going to say refuse, because sometimes part of, that sounds so negative, but they don't want,
bring it out.
Yeah. But it's because it's not just a refusal. There's something that's part of,
In denial?
Lack of no, but it's not in denial. There is denial, and I actually did experience denial myself. Right. There is also something called lack of insight that is not a purposeful thing. Okay, it's called anosognosia is the fancy word for it, and it means lack of insight. And it doesn't, and that sounds negative too, but it means that someone doesn't understand their need, that they have something wrong or that they need help.
Right.
So one of the things that's helpful for people is something, if they're willing to do this, is something like what they have in the United States. And I think they have it overseas because it started from Europe, continental Europe, is what we have is called hearing voices. I don't know what it is overseas, but in the United States, it's called hearing voices. And it's where people respect the voices they hear or the experiences they have, and it's a peer run, meaning people who have the
we've got it here,
are the ones who you're talking to, and it can be very helpful for people to learn coping mechanisms. And so I would say one of the things that's growing and that is very helpful is peer support specialists, people who are peers who have lived experience, who are able to help somebody else, because there are people who live successfully without medication. There's people for whom medication is not effective.
Right.
So, and there are ways to live with mental health, with mental health issues successfully without medication. So, and there's people who, what?
I do.
You do? Awesome.
Yes.
So what is your...
Yeah, obviously, I'm going off topic here, but...
No, I'd love to hear your experience.
Yeah. Well, growing up, I was in and out of hospital every 6 months because I was addicted to prescription medication. So I made myself physically ill and almost overdosed a few times. So I've now gone, God knows how many years without medication now.
Well, great. So I should know this. I should have researched you better. What is your quote unquote diagnosis? What's your label?
I've got severe depression, severe anxiety. I've got severe trauma. I've got CPTSD. Yeah.
So you had it tough. So what then the question from me is, what have you found helpful?
Talking, and me actually attempting suicide has actually given me a bit of a reality check.
Right. Because you wanted to live, right?
Of course.
Yes.
And we all want to live.
Yeah, you just don't want to be in pain.
Exactly.
But the pain is intolerable.
But there's a stigma more attached to males than there is with females. Because in my view, without sounding sexist, there's more help for women out there than men.
Yeah, I think that there's a stigma attached to a man getting help.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah, because we've been indoctrinated and brainwashed to be these masculine people. No,
right. So, I mean, I did, I've been a consumer of therapy since I was 18. So I'm, definitely, and, and do you use talking in terms of with therapists, or are you more peer oriented?
I prefer doing this. This is my type of therapy, being on the Warriors.
Awesome.
Yes, and obviously I branded my attempt in suicide in 2019.
Oh my gosh, that's recent.
What?
That's recent.
That is recent. Well, I brand that the successful failure, which I love that name, and which turned out I had a severe anxiety attack due to the trauma I experienced. But now I'm on my journey to go and get in my PhD in psychology.
Awesome.
I know.
That's awesome.
Yes. More
and more people like us who are open and have lived experience are becoming psychotherapists. So not only are we peer support specialists who don't get very much money, but have that advanced training where you can bring the two together, which is so powerful.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes, it's just I'm constantly being, because obviously I've got my level 3 in mental health awareness at the minute, which obviously I can coach people, but because I'm not working for anyone, I'm doing it all on my own back. People don't want to pay.
Oh, no. Yeah. Your time is worth money. It's tough, though, because people like us don't necessarily have the money.
Yeah, well, this is what I keep saying, and this is what I'll say again. If people don't want to come to us, which there's no waiting time, we can help now, and you want to be on the NHS NHS waiting list for up to a year to be prescribed medication that 95% will not work, be my guest. Be my guest. But then we just get accused of taking money off vulnerable, which we don't.
I know. That's what's going to be nice.
Have you ever received that?
Have I what?
Have you ever received that where you're basically being assumed that you're taking advantage of vulnerable people?
Well, I don't. Unfortunately, for me, I don't charge money except for my book. If people want to buy my book,
let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Talk about your book.
Well, in 2013, there was a family crisis.
Right.
And the family crisis triggered hypomania in me. And I just had to do something with all these thoughts that going on, racing in my head. So I started writing, and I started writing blogging online, and found an incredibly strong, supportive mental health community online, which is incredible, like this community. And and the community I found was very supportive, very pro, they weren't pro mental health, you know what I mean? Let's positive mental health, and very supportive, mutually supportive. And same with the writing community. And there's a lot of actually overlap because just as they've had research done, K. Redfield Jameson is Catherine Redfield Jennings, I think is her name. She did research on the overlap of the arts, specifically writing, and mood disorders in writers. There's a huge overlap.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons is because you have to get these words out. You have to deal with these feelings, right? And a very therapeutic way of dealing with the feelings is writing. So this was one of my therapies. I was also in psychotherapy and in taking medication, which for me with bipolar is a little bit different than what you're dealing with. So for bipolar, it's life-saving for me. Keeps me stable.
Yeah, because obviously, even though I've got CPTSD and the trauma still restructures me, I may have bipolar. I don't know.
Well, it's dangerous to diagnose yourself.
Oh, it is. But maybe I can get an assessment off you. I don't know.
I don't.
I'm joking. No, I know.
A lot. It's just, but seriously, it's for me personally, medication's very helpful, and I've had very excellent. I've been very blessed and privileged in that I've had good insurance and good treatment.
Yeah.
Okay. But even when I was on disability and put on Medicare, which is our public health here, a lot of providers don't accept Medicare. So it's a problem, Yes. But I still was privileged. There were times when we just paid out of pocket and got reimbursed whatever we would get reimbursed. And just because it was important that I got stable. And because I don't, I have a husband who worked, who was an engineer and stuff. I had that stability and stuff in my home, in financially. But what was I going to say? I don't even know what I was going to say. It was important.
It'll come back to you. But anyway, where can people find your book?
They can find my blog. Oh, writing. That's right. We were talking about my book. So I started blogging and then ended up purposing some of that content into a book and organizing it and writing a preface and organize, stuff like that. And the book you can find on Amazon. It turns out it's also at Barnes and Noble. So I don't know where else it is. The only place I'm getting any income is Amazon. So, and it's in Europe on Amazon, and I believe UK too. So wherever your Amazon is, it's called Balancing Act, Writing Through. Got it. You got it down. So Balance Act, Writing Through Bipolar Life. And it basically, that's it. So it's little rocks. And thank you to Michelle Hammer, who's a schizophrenic mental health advocate and graphic designer. She designed that cover and the interior of the print version. So anyway, so that's where you can get it. I have a website, kittomalley.com. I'm all over social media. Pretty easy. If you just put my name, which you can see right there, into the browser, you'll find me. Absolutely. Because I've been online since 2013.
Yes. So now we've got your story out there. Let's talk about these fires, which my daughter's back now. Has these fires triggered you in any way? Triggered your bipolar?
That's interesting because your physical health affects your mental health.
It does.
Right? It's not like they're separate, right? No. You're a body. You know what I mean? Your brain.
Mental health is all health. It's physical, health. Emotional, spiritual, you name it.
Exactly. It's all part of, all intertwined. Because I'm struggling, it does kind of bring me down just a little bit, but it's not. It's really more of a need to rest.
Right.
So I don't experience it as now that I have so much. I'm 59. Okay. So
we're going from
18 to 59. So I have a lot of lived experience. And so with all that lived experience, I sort of reframe a lot of things. So I kind of reframe this as just needing to recuperate, just needing to rest. Rather than before, my brain was wired differently. I sort of rewired it over the years by kind of reframing things and rethinking things and rewriting things, so that now what I may have before like gone into a depression, now it's like, no, I just need to relax.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Well, I don't know what else. I think we've covered it.
Time. Do we need to fill some time? How long does your thing go?
It goes as long as we want.
As long as you want? Okay. I can talk about one thing. We both have, I don't know if you feel comfortable with this, but I'll talk about parenting a high needs kid while you live with mental health issues. So, which is part of my book is organized by parts, and it's like a narrative, and then like my journey, and then it's bipolar disorder, and then it's mental health advocacy, and then caretaking, because as it turned out, here I tried to balance career and being a mother when my son was very young, and I wasn't able to, and I ended up hospitalized. Yeah. And I reframed that as God making me stay home, because I was very ambitious, so it was hard for me to stay home. Staying home with a young child is not intellectually stimulating.
No, it's not.
So, but my kid, as it turned out, needed me. He was a high needs kid. He had severe migraines that we didn't recognize as migraines because they were gastrointestinal migraines. So we just thought he kept on getting sick with the stomach flu. He had depression, anxiety, and ADHD. So luckily I had some skills, and I knew that he needed help. So by the time he was 4, I had him seeing a child psychologist. By the time he was 5, I was ready to give up and took him actually to a child psychiatrist because he needed that. And he personally has found medication very helpful. So I think it's like, what do you find helpful? Because I very much believed in, even when he was young, like getting his buy-in and talking to him and, what do you think's helpful and not helpful? By the time he was 10, he didn't want to do therapy anymore. He said he found medication more helpful than therapy. Okay. You've been in therapy since you were 4.
That's like my son, because even though he's in the secondary school, he found he learns more from YouTube than he does in school.
Wow. It's interesting how they become aware too. I mean, I'm like always into like, don't just impose my idea of how to be, because my son's different than I am, And so, well, he's now 22. Parenting him was very difficult, but he's now 22. He is going to college. He's living on his own. I mean, he's financially dependent on us, but he has his own little studio apartment an hour away. And he regularly thanks me for how I parented him.
Wow.
So people think, and I thought I had internalized stigma. As soon as my diagnosis technically changed from depression to bipolar, I thought, oh no, I'm going to be a bad mom. I have to go, I can't be taking care of him. I need to put him in daycare. And which is horrible to think that, and it was just the change of the label. I was the same
heat
person.
of the moment. Was it heat of the moment?
It wasn't a heat of the moment. It was what I call internalized stigma, because it wasn't of the moment.
Yeah.
It was deep. It was deep.
Right. Okay.
I thought I now have, and you have to remember, I was clinically trained. So I thought I now have a progressive, serious, lifelong, mental illness that, and the clients that I worked with who were in residential treatment with bipolar were, if you're in residential treatment in the United States, it means that you have pretty out of control.
Absolutely.
So, if they're not even able to live with their parents because their behavior is so out of control. So that's what I thought I was. And so it took a long time for me to understand that I was a good enough mother. And in retrospect, that I was better than a good enough mother.
Yeah. Absolutely. Right. Well, is there anything you can finish off?
Well, I do. And this sounds a little trite because people say it all the time, but I'm going to say it. You are enough as you are. You are loved. You are loving and lovable. And I think that that's a spiritual thing, that we have to understand how important our spirit is, and that's the most important thing, is to understand, is that acceptance and love for ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Right. Well, all I've got to say is thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Don't just come back. Come back with a force.
A force.
I hope you do come back. Yes, I will be connecting you with Dale. I really do.
Okay, great.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I hope everyone loved that, whether you're on replay. Hi, Kerry. I know you just got in, but we're wrapping up. So, yeah, please subscribe, and this will be on Spotify probably over the weekend.
Ooh,
so,
great.
Yes. Next week, I am back. And we are going to be talking with Kerry and Veronica, talking about the connection between mental health and baking.
That sounds fascinating. Oh, I love it.
Well, tune in. Same time next week. That's in her diary already. So I will see you all later. And yeah, please share this all, and we'll looking for the video now. There you go. Right. See you later.
Okay.
Don't go anywhere, you.
Not me? Okay.